apologize in advance. It's so windy here. There's not really much I can do with my little GoPro to help the audio. Hopefully you can still understand me and hear what I'm saying. I am standing in a very historic place, as always. I'm in Quebec, in Canada. This is Quebec City, and I'm standing on the Plains of Abraham. The Plains of Abraham. You may have heard of the Plains of Abraham. Today, this is a city park, a very beautiful sort of Hyde Park style city park, very well maintained, green. This was, however, the site of a great battle in 1759, the Battle of the Plains of Abraham. This battle changed the course of the 7 Years' War, or the, as it was called in North America, the French and Indian War. Why was it so significant? Well, you could argue it wasn't just significant for the French and Indian War, but it was significant for world history. This was a game-changing war. This was the war that will propel the British Empire into a very, very dominant position, and possibly, you could argue, the first position of being the first global superpower ever. Amazingly, the British Empire will continue to grow and become even more powerful over time, but that begins here on the Plains of Abraham. The French and Indian War, the 7 Years' War, was your run-of-the-mill imperial war. And of course, the armies that met here, if you were to interview the men, and of course I can't get into their heads, so I don't know, but it seems to me if you were to interview the men about why are you fighting here? What are you fighting for? You might hear things like, I'm fighting for my country, or I'm fighting for my king. These are interesting sentiments. They lend to war the idea that you're fighting for a noble cause or something greater or bigger than yourself. That may be true, or you could dig deep, look for historical roots, and you could find that maybe the motivation for these conflicts is really a lot more base than these noble sentiments. In fact, when you look at the French and Indian War, what you find is that this was a war fought over land. This was a war fought for the expansion of empire, at least on the part of the British. The French, in many ways, were simply defending their empire, what they saw as their empire. In Virginia and elsewhere, but especially in Virginia, the most aggressive speculators were there. You have these land speculators and these land speculation companies. Of course, they're tied into government as well. That's the key to mercantilism, which was the sort of ruling economic system of the time, is that monarch-merchant nexus. It's not just companies, it's not just government, it's a combination. It's political entrepreneurship that makes you rich in a mercantilist system. But in any case, you have these speculators, these land speculation companies, and they want the land west and northwest of the Appalachians. They want the hundreds of thousands, really the millions of acres there. Virginia, of course, has a claim going way back for all this land. There are other colonies that dispute that claim, but it's Virginia's companies that are the most aggressive in, getting monarchical approbation for their plans and lobbying the royal governor and other things. So at the end of the day, it's the Virginians that really push this thing along. The royal powers that be have purchased this land from the Iroquois Confederacy, another empire, actually. Now, the Iroquois actually don't control the Ohio River Valley. There are other nations there, like the Delaware and the Shawnee, that they don't recognize Iroquois supremacy, but the Iroquois claim to control it, so they sell it to the English, and now the English think it's theirs, and they bought it, free and clear, and yet there are people living there from whom they did not buy it. So it's a complicated situation, or maybe it's not that complicated. But this is land that the French claim, and if there's any European power that can lay claim to the Ohio River Valley and this land west of the Appalachians, northwest of the Appalachians, it's the French. It's French missionaries, French fur trappers, French explorers that have been active in this area and around this area for 200 years. Not the British or anyone else. And so when these land speculation companies begin to, as part of their contract, often they're told, you got to build a fort or you got to send colonists or whatever. When they start to do that, or at least when the French get word that they're going to do that, the French send out a force, a military force, to build a fort of their own. And that's going to start sort of a series of events that leads to bloodshed, and pretty soon you have full-fledged war. That's what it's about. That's the noble cause. Okay? Bunch of rich guys in Virginia and elsewhere claiming hundreds of thousands of acres that they can then sell and get richer from. And then the imperial designs of the French and especially the British. That's the 7 Years' War, or at least the French and Indian War part of it, in a nutshell. That's what these people were fighting for when they said they were fighting for their country here on foreign soil. So sort of interesting. By the way, I should give the colonials a break. Most of them were not interested in this war at all. They had to really be coaxed and often intimidated and threatened to even participate in it, generally speaking. It was British regulars that had to be sent over and do the bulk of the fighting. But in any case, the two armies met here after several years of French victory, for the most part. The British have been badly beaten time and time again until the battle right here on the Plains of Abraham that changed everything. The British win. They go on to take Montreal later. When the dust settles, the French are booted out of North America. That North American empire is gone, which will have huge implications. It removes the need for the British military presence in the minds of many colonials. It creates a need to pay for this war. The British engaged in, under William Pitt, severe deficit spending. And that means someone's got to pay in the future for what you're doing now. And so when the war's over, some of the British say, well, these American colonials should pay. And when taxation is attempted, when tighter regulation is attempted, of course, this is what sparks the American Revolution, which goes on to spark other revolutions in Europe and across the world, and the whole landscape has changed. You have Britain vaulted to superpower status for a while. You have tens of thousands, really hundreds of thousands of people killed. You have similar British victories happening in other parts of the world, notably India. I mean, this is a major victory, and it starts with the British defeat of the French right here on the Plains of Abraham. But make no mistake, this was an imperial war. This was a war over land and imperial expansion.